Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Enlightened Masculinity, where we're talking about the modern day masculine, mystical man. And I'm joined, of course, with Akash Inti Katakam from New Jersey. And what's the city that you're in right now?
Montclair, New Jersey.
Montclair, very famous city. And of course, I'm coming to you from Florida right now, Gainesville, Florida. And who knows where I'll be next week. But we got some interesting questions, some interesting topics that we're going to talk about today. And, a little bit about our background, just so you kind of know who we are. I've been doing yoga for about 8 years, and I've been teaching yoga for about 5 years. And there was a long history of teaching before that, dealing with, I was a wrestling coach in college, and I was teaching university for 7 years. And, then I got my PhD in engineering, so I'm very meticulous in just how I communicate and how I teach. And even my understanding of masculine, feminine, dating dynamics and communication, I really just like to break it down. I almost have like spreadsheets of techniques, just like lists and lists and lists. And I think there's pros and cons to that, but that's just, how I do things. And I'm joined with Akash, who's genius in his own right, biotech research analyst, and also a certified yoga teacher and building his yoga career. And we have similar teachers, actually the same teachers, Vince Kelvin and Arash Dibazar. My main teacher is Arash Dibazar. And, so we just make it a practice of taking our yoga out into social living, out around people that don't know who we are. It's very easy to be, a social master or a masculinity, guru when you're always talking to the same students over and over and you're never introducing yourself to someone new that doesn't know who you are, that doesn't come with a reputation, So we're here talking about and, spreading the knowledge that we've acquired through harder effort, because it's not easy to socialize when you're so used to a level of admiration from people and you go out and interact with people that don't know who you are. It's very different. It's a wholly different reference. So we're here to talk about this, and Akash has some great topics for us. So I want to hand it over to him. What's new with you and your practices, brother?
Yes. Well, first off, I guess I'll start with a brief introduction about myself as well. I am a senior biotech analyst, and I've been doing that for a little while, but also just recently got my yoga teacher certification and have been starting a sunrise yoga hiking experience that'll mostly ramp up during the spring and the summer. Additionally, I've been studying pickup and seduction now for close to 2 to 3 years under our teachers Vince Kelvin and Arash Dibazar, and having a blast. So that's kind of my tradition and my lineage thus far. In terms of today and kind of what's come up for me, just got back from a brunch with a new friend that I was introduced to, who's associated with the Mankind Project. So very much similar in terms of a men's group that aims to teach men kind of what does it mean to be masculine in today's day and age in a way that's healthy. One of the things that I wanted to get to was a couple of conversations that I see that you and Yuri, Little Monk IMC, what's up Yuri, online right now, have been having throughout the week. I've been listening to the Science of Spiritual Growth podcast that you guys have been putting together. Absolutely phenomenal and really rich content in the sense of getting a better understanding from an advanced Buddhist meditator and you yourself, a traveling yogi, kind of the conversation itself. I was curious to learn more about the topics of, I guess, like sexuality. So you had talked a little bit about some like sexual techniques like carezza and such, and these were kind of some of the things that I wanted to delve into a little bit today. As well, I've practiced tantra in my practice itself, so it's interesting to hear about some of these different things. But I want to turn it over to you in the sense of what are some techniques that you guess you've experimented with, and perhaps you can talk a little bit about them, and we can dialogue between those back and forth.
Yeah, that's super interesting. What exactly do you mean techniques? Like techniques of sex, or?
So I mean, carezza is one in the sense of men and women. There's no just uniting, no ejaculation. Tantra, what I've practiced is really extending out sessions for long periods of time. Again, with the same type of intention of I guess holding ejaculate itself. So any, I guess, practices that you've had or experiences maybe that you can speak to?
Well, lots of experiences. Not a there's a little bit of a echo I hear on your side.
Mm.
And so my headphones are plugged into the computer, and then the Instagram Live is open, and the volume's down on the Instagram. Um, yeah, lots of more experiences than practice. You know, when I first got into yoga, uh, my initial like urge to do yoga was like my body posture. Like I felt garbage inside. I just felt like my posture was just like I was used to a good posture, especially in wrestling, lots of squats, and just gives you a really erect spine and just really strong, you know. And I had sworn that off for 2 years and was doing a lot of psychedelics, and so I was slowly becoming like contorted, like you see like old druggies or hipster hippie kind of people, like they just got weird spines because that's what LSD does to your spine. And so I was just feeling really bad in my body, and I went to yoga. First, I looked up yoga, and I'd already tasted of yoga. And in one of the two classes I had tasted, there was a girl who was the apprentice of the senior guy there. It was a really amazing in Oklahoma. It was like a really top-notch yoga school. Because I've been to a lot of yoga schools now, and that was a top-notch school. And so she was the apprentice of that guy, and love at first sight kind of thing. But I was a super beta male. I hadn't really interacted with too many women. It was mostly like wrestling and engineering up until that point, and just a very sheltered life and so on. So 2 years later, when I felt like garbage, and I look up yoga, and I see that she's one of the teachers there, and I look up her class, and she had the beginner class. And so I show up to the beginner class. I'm the only one that shows up. And she does like ridiculous things that if I did as a guy to a single girl student who came to my class would definitely be sexual harassment. Like definitely, like bending over right in front of her to demonstrate the pose, like folding over, like this is how you like shit, man. He's teasing me. He's putting candy in front of a starving man kind of thing. Like, of course. Anyway, so long story short, after a few sessions of going to her class, and I wasn't always the only one that showed up. That was actually probably, I asked her out on a date. We started hanging out. And after a couple of times of hanging out, she had handed me this book called Sexual Secrets. And I have never fully read the book, but there was a lot of, it was tantric practices. It was a well-written book. I just wasn't like of the mind state to really look into it. Oh, all right. They shouldn't be able to call. I got the no notifications on. So that was interesting to go into that. And I saw especially I remember this one table, it was a graph that would like, when you climax, it would be like you go up a level and then plateau a little bit. And if you can sustain for a little while, then it'll go up another level and then plateau and up another level. And I think there were like 4 levels or something to this. And there were a lot of stories in there about like the female and the male, like embodying the Shiva Parvati or the Shiva Shakti. And like the female is asking questions about the nature of the universe. And the male is like, just like, responding to the feminine questions and inquiry. And I had previous experiences of something like that. Like one time, I used to be just like ravenous with sex with my girlfriend. Like, I would brag. I was a very virile like athlete. And I would brag that her and I in the year that we were together had sex 1,000 times. And it was just like an immense, and what's so fortunate is I never, almost ever, probably never wore a condom. It was so fortunate that I'm not a dad. Like, I don't know how that happened because I know it's potent. But anyway, maybe she couldn't do it because she had a history and maybe it was something that she couldn't get pregnant. Long story short, there were a couple of times in our sex sessions that went for like 2 hours, of just like 2 hours of sex. And I remember at the time there was something that happened one time where I wasn't really high, but like we had gone so far into just like, slipping and sliding all over each other and just, it was really good. It was just like we had climaxed a bunch of times and we were still at it. Like we were still hungry for each other. And I remember because we weren't on drugs, but I had experienced drugs and it became like a drug trip. Like it was very purples and oranges and were very bright. And like my visual field and what I was seeing in my sight was very like extruded. Like it had a little bit more dimension to it or depth. And there was a sense of like I was seeing the essence of this person. It was more of like, I could see the face behind their face, like the self-image, the face of their self-image almost. And I didn't have this kind of vocabulary to describe it because I'm better at talking about it now. But it felt like a very spiritual experience. Like we were beyond the need for another orgasm, but we were still like in lust and in love with each other in that moment. And it just kept going. And it was like, and when it ended, it like, there was not like a definite ending. It just kind of transitioned into life, like, And of course, the danger of that is if you don't have containment or control, because that was like my first experience with that. I've had other experiences like that. that if you don't contain it, you end up pouring out that sexuality on people that aren't deserving of it. That if, without the discernment, it's easy for it to end and transition into life, and I'm still feeling just like overflowing with love from my heart and my groin and my head. And then whoever I interact with is the recipient of that sexual energy.
Yeah, this is a great point and topic, I think, and I think that opened up the jar of this conversation in a lot of ways. What makes a proper, like identifying a proper sexual partner from your perspective as a yogi, I guess, as well? I mean, I have some thoughts on this myself, but I'm curious to kind of, because you mentioned like you can pour out these emotions to whomever or these feelings to whomever, but how do we decide who's right to engage in some type of practice like this?
Well, I first want to say a couple things. Like, first, I said it the other day. I think it was in my podcast with Yuri. I don't really see sex as a practice outside of just living as a practice. Like right now, I'm practicing. Like all of life is just, I'm finding ways to practice in all things, whether it's talking outside. Here's the basic. Like I'm always either talking or I'm talking inside. So there's always either I'm talking and or there's a self-talk going on at the same time. And in the moments where there's no talking outside and there's no talking inside, that's yoga. It's like nothing's happening, And then there's other practices to bring into that, like what's my posture, like what's my perception. But 99.9% of the time, there's a self-talk and there's an outer talk. So if I make talking part of my spiritual practice, then 99% of the time, I'm engaged in the spiritual practice. So, and sex is a lot of that for me right now. It's funny, when I was really getting acclimated to sex, like in the early days of having sex, that there was not a lot of talking. It was a lot of like caveman grunting and like making faces. I never knew what to say. I didn't know how to dirty talk. Now it's like playing with consciousness and soaring the skies and like playing with imagination and anchoring feelings to certain words and just like having fun and laughing. And, occasionally there's like some raw sex, but it's like, that sounds wrong. Like, I work condoms every time, but it's like, there's some, just more like caveman kind of sex, but that's like a minority. And so when it comes to like a sexual practice, I don't feel as if I'm an authority on sexual practice. What I said in the podcast with Yuri the other day was I seek enlightenment, and then sex will naturally be enlightened sex. I don't seek enlightenment through sex. I seek enlightenment in life, and then of course, if I have sex, I'm an enlightened being having sex. Of course, the sex is enlightened already. So my practice is outside of sex. But part of this is socializing, interacting with the female, and practicing my pickup and seduction, which I fully 100% include in my umbrella of spiritual practice. So that's what I would say about sexual practice. Then the other thing I want to mention before I can really like fully answer this thing is partner, the idea of a partner. I avoid this word mostly because it comes from the homosexual community, which I have no problems with homosexuals, but partner is something that I would say with somebody that like, they're easily exchangeable. Like they're easily replaceable. Like this is my partner, and it's like we're playing musical chairs, and I'll have another partner over there and another partner over there. And one day this partnership will end. Listen, I don't ever make a girlfriend with the idea of breaking up. Like my girlfriend, in my mind, is girlfriend for life unless something happens that unforeseen. But there's no time limit on this, so it's not like my partner. You could call it like my life partner. I just think that diminishes a little bit of the potency of man-woman. Partner is non-man-woman. It's just like we're, spiritual beings and whatever. And that's a beautiful idea. It's very romantic. But I don't really believe that the soul is fucking. The soul isn't mating. The soul isn't engaging in sex. It's your body. Your body and your mind is engaging in sex because your body and mind have gender, but your soul doesn't. If we could get into like the syntax and the words of that.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I mean, you bring up the law of gender, one of the laws, I think, the seventh law of alchemy. So showing off some of your master alchemists, I suppose. But getting back to the idea of, I guess, like a sexual partner. I mean, we all know that life is all temporary. Everything that we see, it's all temporary. This time continues to pass on by, and again, this is all an illusion. One of the biggest and most important learnings that I've taken away from Vince and Arash is that everything that you see, everything that you experience is an illusion. It's so easy to get caught up and think that what's going on right now is real and you feel it. It's very visceral in the sense of if you have your hand on a hot stove, or if you put your your body and subject yourself to a cold shower, as you're well aware. It's so easy to get attached to, oh man, I am feeling this, but we're not the I, you know. It's so that's one of the biggest things that I've learned. So in regards to the whole idea of partners, like partners to me, I mean, I very much do, when I enter a relationship, it's like we're going for like the long run. Like to me, it's like when I enter a relationship, it's with the intention that I'm going till I die, you die, or some such thing happens that like there's a way that we cannot be together, like our values just conflicts too much or some such thing. On the same token though, I think it's just as important to realize that this is temporary. And so like, yes, I want to feel all of the feelings of being in love with a person, and really getting that like real close connection, because I mean, that's when you're able to tap into different parts of yourselves that you wouldn't be able to with someone who's not a sexual partner in many ways, and exposes a lot of your different, whether it be insecurities in the way that you can communicate and conversate about topics that are very intimate. It could be feelings within your body that you just don't experience unless you're with another person. Mm-hmm. But also recognizing that they're not always going to be there. And to me, I mean, I don't believe in the concept of the one, or there's one person for you. I believe that there's a number of people around you who you could really connect with and like bond with in many ways. So I've let go of the idea of like that there's one particular person that like this is my only, like, whether it be a sexual partner or like life partner, if you will. But there's a multitude of them around, and I am able to tap into these different partners when I need them. There's different energies that each of them provides and carries, whether it be men or women. So I mean, for one man, there's different types of feminine archetypes that we sometimes need in our particular life, and same for the woman. Ideally, one man is able to express all of the archetypes for one woman, and one woman is able to express all of the archetypes for one man. But I don't necessarily know if that's always the case. As some people haven't developed these different archetypes within themselves, and we can get into some of that a little bit later throughout this discussion itself. But those are, I guess, a couple thoughts there. I mean, maybe we turn over to some questions for the audience to see if anyone has questions while we continue conversing.
Yeah, definitely type your questions if you got them, or any comments, and we'll read them off. I don't see any at the moment right now. I really like that concept of what you just said about developing the archetypes within us. And going back to the original question of how do I discern who I'm going to, be sexual with? Sex is a very low threshold for a man. The very, very low entry of what am I willing, because a lot of times, there's an old sect, I forget what the sect is in India, but to become like the head of the monastery at this church or whatever it is, that the monk would be naked and a bunch of sexy prostitutes would come around and like grope on him and touch him and flirt with him and just kiss him and things like this. And if he has any inkling of an erection, he's not fit to be the abbot. And so he has to not get any erection around it. And he's already a celibate and an ascetic. So of course this is like very stimulating, right? Extremely stimulating. And so it's a very low entry threshold for a man because there's no damage to me. Sex has zero consequence to me except for STDs, but put that aside, assuming that I'm not going with a dirty girl, which is a rare thing, and I protect myself so, pregnancy is not in question. And even if it was, the biology doesn't really care about that. In modern times, there'll be enforcement of the man has to stick around. But nature didn't intend the man to stick around. Or he didn't punish the man for not sticking around. He would just inseminate everywhere, And so there's so little damage to me. Like, at all. I could go to Las Vegas and knock up 10 women and impregnate 10 women, and I go back to my city and they go back to their cities. And if nobody calls me with the message that, hey, I'm pregnant, you have a son or a daughter, zero damage to me. Like zero. It's actually probably helpful for me because I can express my prostate and all these things, and so it's less risk of cancer and so on. So, but it's like net zero for me. But all of them, if they get pregnant, their body is destroyed like a used battery. Then they have 8 or 10 years of caring, like very dedicated for the kid before the kid has any semblance of like autonomy and can care for themselves at all. So it's like a decade of their life, and their body is decimated so that they're less attractive to a future mate. That's the risk to a woman. But to me, zero. impregnate 100 women, 0 damage. Unless I get an STD, 0 damage. So,
but on that note, though, I mean, as an enlightened man, or as I mean, you're a yogi, I'm a yogi, and I'm very choosy actually in my sexual partners. There's many women that are like very much into me, and it's like, yes, like you're attractive and whatnot, but I hold standards for myself, and it's and I think men, especially as we continued along the enlightened path, there needs to be standards of like what makes a woman a valuable sexual partner to a man who continues to ascend and grow and challenge themselves to grow, because sex is just as taxing, maybe not in the physical sense of a man, but in more of a in Taoist techniques. I mean, they talk about how semen is the most potent life force energy that the universe has, in the sense of I think there's something like 60 or 80% of the energy that we create, or like of all of the energy that we create, I think like 40 or 60% of it just goes to creating semen for men, which is like insane. It's a very high percentage of, yeah, you're eating all of this food, but most of it just goes to making sperm. And so there's a lot of that's very energetically taxing on a man when he releases. And the whole idea that the Taoists had was like that you conserve this energy because it's like more potent than blood, like 100 times more potent than blood in terms of like the energy that it gives off, because it's life creating energy. And so for a man, it's very important to be understanding of when you're releasing this energy, because it is so potent and it releases so much. They say that the men who conserve their semen and retain it, they continue to add years onto their life because they retain that energy within.
Say that, but Hugh Hefner lived to be a long time.
Totally.
So they say that. I think that maybe thoughts maybe have more potent energy than semen. You know what I'm saying? A very potent thought can be very, very powerful and can really cascade effects through society in a way that I don't know that semen can. I think on a maybe mechanical or physical level. I'm not like a Taoist expert or Taoist expert, however you pronounce it. We got a comment about RSD, which we'll get to. So yes, then so the entry, listen, on a desert island, you would, if nobody knew about it, there's a very low threshold for what you would have sex with. And you will find a way, now you might not be repeated with it, but you will find a way to make it useful for your growth. Every woman is very different. Men are very much similar, very similar. Anywhere you go in the world, men are very similar. But every woman, any man that's been with multiple women throughout their life, not at the same time. I mean, maybe at the same time, but like if you've been with several women, you quickly realize that every woman gets off differently. That their body is mapped different. Listen, girls, every guy is more or less the same. It's once you figure out how to get one man off, that's how you're going to get off almost every man. Women are different. Every new woman you're with will round you out. You will get a piece of the pie that you weren't getting with whatever other women you were with. No two women are the same. So you increase your skill set, which as a man, I think I've said it before, I forget if it was this podcast or another one, you either got it or you got to learn it, or you're never going to get it. So if you don't have it yet, that means you're either never going to get it or you got to learn it. How do you learn it? Is experience. You learn how to be good at making love by making love with more people. And if you have a person that has lots of experience, this is as a man. If you have a partner that has a lot of experience, she can teach you a lot. Generally, that's going to be an older woman. And so, like Catherine Ullman would say, there's a long history and tradition in the East of older women initiating and teaching younger men all the intricacies of sex. And I think that's a beautiful tradition. And I myself, growing up, a lot of my girlfriends when I was younger were older than me. Now everybody I'm with is younger than me, with the occasional older person. And that's great. So when you have an abundance, then your thresholds will start to raise as far as beauty. But ultimately, if nobody found out about it, your threshold would be moderately low, unless it was going to take away from your performance later with the beauty. But even then, you almost want to go through with it so that you're less needy of the beauty later, which ends up resulting in a better seduction a lot of times. Publicly, if people are going to know about who you've been with, you want them to be more beautiful. If you want your girlfriend to know who you've been with, you want her to be more beautiful. You want your girlfriend to admire the beauty of the women that are getting with you. That makes her more attracted to you. And now you got to get through some initial belief systems that might hinder that. She'll be, I would never be with a man like that. But then she'll always still be looking at you. Even if she broke up with you, she'll still be looking at you, knowing, subconsciously lying to herself that was a good catch. her nature will punish the woman who doesn't be around the man who gets lots of other women. This is part of enlightenment. The man doesn't realize this. You're just trying to turn out the light, or you're trying to cover up the light. That you will increase your skill set interacting with more women, and you'll interact with more women on a deeper level if you demonstrate to each of them that you get other women. And the more you can demonstrate beautiful women, the more beautiful the woman will be attracted to you. So you can keep it on the DL, but ultimately I think every woman that a man can interact with on a deeper level is going to contribute to my skill set, which is always going to benefit future relationships. And it always seems to help me. In my experience, it always seems to help me soften my communication. Like every new woman somehow softens something in me that I was a little too jagged with, a little too rough around the edges. And so it's a little bit different than, or maybe a lot bit different than Taoist or Tantric practices. And so I really like hearing your perspectives on it, because a lot of it is so different from what I do that it's really helping me to clarify things. So I don't know, over to you.
Yeah, before we continue, I know Don, my buddy, had a question about RSD loop. I'll turn it over to you. I have my own perspectives on RSD myself. I'm sure ours are very aligned based on who our teacher is, but have you anything to say about RSD particularly, or do we?
Okay, so everybody that's tuning into this that doesn't know, RSD is a company called Real Social Dynamics. And they took that name from Mystery, Eric von Markovic, who came out with the idea of social dynamics. And so this is early in the pickup days, and they all lived in like a mansion. And the founders of RSD, before they had called it RSD, just put the word real in front of it, Real Social Dynamics. So probably some underlying animosity there, why that happened. For years, Arash, our teacher, was talking about how, the head guy for RSD had slept with the girlfriend of the guy that invented social dynamics, Mystery. And later, like a month or two ago, Arash was talking with Mystery and found out that that's not the case. That the guy, RSD Tyler, was a cool guy, and Eric von Markovic and RSD Tyler got along, and this and that. And my experience with RSD, so that's the backstory. So there was sometimes some animosity around that. Like, this guy was unethical, living in the same mansion with another guy and slept with his girlfriend, and the guy was his teacher. And so it was like, that's unethical. But if that's not the case, then even putting that aside, here's my experience with RSD. I met RSD Tyler once, briefly, on the rooftop in New York City. And, I watched him. It's just different, man. It's like, it's like the difference between, Texas high school football and NFL or something like that. Like, Texas high school football is still hella good. Like, Texas high school football would beat a lot of colleges at football. It's ridiculous how good at football they are. And they take it serious too, but it's still not NFL. That's the difference between RSD Tyler and Arash Dibazar. And it was just a different vibe. I saw him interacting with groups of guys, and there was just it was just a different method, and I just look at the results. I just don't see the results, then
that's exactly it. It's like getting to results. From my experience,
but there's no comparison. There's no comparison.
That's exactly it.
That has 5 beautiful girlfriends. It's
that's exactly it. It's like you look at the results of who your teacher is, and you see if is this the type of person that I want to, or is this the type of lifestyle, what they're exhibiting, is that the type of lifestyle that I want to have?
And the other main thing is in the students of the RSD method. So I've met lots of students of the IMC method, you, Yuri, BC, Robert, lots of guys that they're just Christian. Every guy that follows Vince and Arash seems to have just a different vibe about them. Maybe it's because we imbue so much spirituality and sorcery and black magic and just things that are taboo, and at the same time very conventional, white magic and surrendering to a higher power and things like this. There's a lot of spirituality in how they teach pickup and seduction. So much spiritual. It's the same thing to them. And when I meet RSD students or people that say they study RSD, I'm almost always 100% of the time, I would say, in my experience. Now, maybe it's because some people that aren't putting me off, they're not saying they study RSD. But every single person I've met, and maybe 24 people I've met out socializing that say they study RSD. Why? Because they'll catch me doing something like, oh, that's a game technique. That's a pickup. And we'll get to talking about it. And they're like, yeah, I follow RSD and this and that. man, like in my humble, biased opinion, they're assholes. Like everybody I've met that was an RST follower, like there's just something like like they had to prove something very macho and aggressively. And, I'm sure that gets them women. There is a certain kind of woman that just loves that, eats it up. And uh, also all the power to them, if they're getting the results that they want. I have watched maybe 2 or 3 dozen RST videos on YouTube. So admittedly, they're the free shit. I'm sure that they got some. Really more potent content and their paid content. When I was first getting into like pickup, so I don't watch them anymore. Why? Because you might ask, why did you watch 2 dozen pickup videos if they weren't getting anything out of it? Because they were animated, they were entertaining, but I never learned a technique. Like I didn't, And then as soon as I found Arash Dibazar, there was just no looking back. Like it was just night and day. It was a total difference. It was like seeing the Rocky Mountains versus the Appalachian Mountains. Like it's just totally different.
And yeah, just to build off of that, I mean, Don, from my experience, I've been studying pickup. I remember seeing the Pickup Artist on VH1, and I was enamored. I was in 7th grade at that point. I was enamored. I was like, what are they doing? How is this happening? That was my foray into pickup. Then I read about the game, practiced throughout college, like every now and then in between relationships. And it was an incredible way of it was just beautiful seeing this whole pickup scene. I mean, I've heard about them, I've looked at some of their stuff, but again, really what I had connected with Vince and Arash was that they're really playing this game at such a higher level. As you mentioned, it's literally like NFL high school football type stuff.
It's so different.
And the way that they approach this subject is they approach it with a sense of sacredness, and that it's not like we're just out here to get women, and like it's not about debauchery by any stretches of the imagination. It's about learning how to get in touch with the inner self and self-express more than anything else. And I found this to be, again, not only applicable for pickup, and that's the other thing, is like everything that I've learned from pickup and seduction, I apply this to other aspects of my life, and it's incredibly potent. The same tactics that you're using to quote unquote get with a girl or some such thing, you apply that to business, and it's like, whoa, you're miles ahead of the competition. So in that sense, and again, there's, as our teacher Arash Dibazar says, there's one game in life, and that's the spiritual game. If you can practice spirituality in every single thing that you do, you're miles ahead of everyone else, because people simply aren't aware of what they're doing, how they're communicating, how they're showing themselves and displaying who they are, how they conduct themselves in business. I mean, it comes down, everything in life, anything that you seek comes down to communication. So I say we go, Chris, for maybe another 5 to 10 minutes, and then we wrap up from there.
I agree. Yeah.
So I can talk briefly, I guess, a little bit about some of the Taoist techniques that I've studied and learned. From books mostly, but
especially the part, what I would really be interested in hearing, if you're willing to share, would be your personal experience of how it has clarified the masculine and the feminine in not necessarily the theory of it, but like as you put it into practice. Are you seeing a distinction between gender as you go through the practices?
Yeah. So again, the technique that comes to me immediately is it's mostly around sex itself. So one of the most important things that I've found is becoming aware of your breathing when you're engaging in sex itself, and becoming aware of your partner's breathing. Ideally, you spend maybe 5 to 10 minutes before you even begin like touching each other and getting all over each other, of just harmonizing the breathing. Of your you being the masculine, you dictate the way that breath goes. So your inhale, she follows your inhale, and then she follows your exhale. And the reason why you do it for longer periods of time is simply so that you guys are on the same wavelength and you build a stronger connection in that sense. From there, that's where you start. And so I guess in the sense of like masculine, feminine, as you're talking about, is that the man is the one, as Arash says, the man leads at the woman's pace. So you get a sense of where is she in her breathing, and it's as much as you dictate the breath, but you feel her breath, and you see, where is she? Is her breathing really shallow? You can tell if her breathing's really shallow, she's really in her head. Is her breathing really deep? If it's really deep, she's really in her body, and she may be able to tap into deeper levels, and it gives you a good sense of where can I take this where can I take this experience? I mean, in a particular, you could set up and sit down and be like, okay, we're gonna have sex tonight, and then you realize, like, no, this is not where she is right now. That's not what she needs, you know. And
Mm.
it's like understanding, being comfortable enough with yourself that you're not seeking to take anything from her. As the masculine is a provider, from what I've learned, and as we learned in the sacred love event, and that it's really giving without expectation. It's not like I'm giving you these things because I want something back, and you're going to get me off, and that's what it's all about. It's like, no, 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 no. I'm here to give you everything that I possibly can, because I'm that abundant, I'm that wealthy, and I'm that's like the archetype of a king right there, you know. So it's really, really important to approach it in that sense. The other thing, I guess, is as you continue to go through the practice, I mean, it's a reciprocation, it's an exchange. So you give something and she gives you something back. You give her masculine energy and she gives you feminine energy. I mean, we tap into, when you have two people, you're able to tap into deeper levels of both. I think I was reading in the Way of the Superior Man by David Data. Highly, highly recommend this book to any man of this practice itself. There's audiobooks out there. Incredible book. A little bit out there and floppy in some of the way it describes things, but so much on point in the sense of understanding deeper levels of masculinity. But you tap into your masculine, because we all have masculine and feminine energies within us. In a relationship between a man and a woman, the man trusts the woman's feminine energy and allows that to dictate everything, and the woman trusts the man's masculine energy and allows that to dictate everything. When we do this is when we're at a higher state in general. This is the whole idea of like two is better than one. It's like, well, each person is in their highest level of masculine and feminine, and you can use that to guide you, because there's things that masculine energy can guide you through. There's things that feminine energy can guide you through. Feminine more so with emotions and such, masculine more with like logic and reason. And so, or how it tends to be. And so through allowing these types of energies to guide you, you're able to get a better sense, whether it be in the everyday world, whether it be with sex, business, you name it. You're able to follow these and such. So those are, I guess, a couple of the things that I had really mentioned. It seems like we have a question here from Richard Sinta. What's up, Richard? When you start harmonizing your
Zoom and you get your questions answered faster if you come to Zoom.
How do you keep the exciting energy high while the breathing has a relaxing effect? Yeah, good question. So first, I would let go of the idea of like expecting what to see in sex itself. Whatever comes up for you is kind of what needs to be coming up at that point. So it may be exciting in that particular moment. It may be very, I wouldn't say dull, but like just a lot more subdued. So I would let go of that idea to begin with. Regarding the harmonizing it, I mean, you simply follow each other's breath and you get a sense of where are they. I mean, I think, and you're a yogi yourself, Chris. I mean, one of the things that for yoga I've picked up the most is like paying attention to other people's breath. It tells you so much about where is that person in the sense of how are they experiencing reality. And I'm sure you in your communication, you pick up on this, and you see someone's breathing in their chest a lot more, you know how to talk to them versus more in their belly or even in their groin. So I'll pass over to you if you have any thoughts on this question itself. But.
Yeah, I think it's important to distinguish excitement from tension. And I think a lot of the excitement that you think is excitement is really your tense around, your outcome that you're wanting. So if you relax, so just distinguish tension from excitement. When you relax your body, it's possible to be excited and relaxed. Those aren't antonyms. So what you're considering excitement, I think, is probably the tension around your desired outcome. So as you relax and she relaxes, you become more comfortable with each other. Then if you can build excitement from that place, that's real excitement. And excitement starts in the mind, and it kind of wells up as an energy from inside. And it's about learning the communication skill set of how do I channel this excitement in a way that's conducive to growth and moving the seduction forward in a way that's pleasant for her and for myself. And it really all revolves around communication. There are plenty of times where I'm like almost about to have sex, and then just through the process of talking, it just naturally like backs off. But the excitement didn't leave. The arousal didn't necessarily leave. It was just the conversation was so much more interesting. And there's so much energy in words that you could almost say like there's sexuality, sexual energy in words. Like there's so much potency in the communication. And it's like you were talking about a moment ago, where like the clarifying the roles of masculine, feminine as you're guiding through the breathing, and you're paying attention to her breathing, and you can guide in a certain way and she can guide in a different way. And when that skill set translates to just life, leading people in life, following in life, being more comfortable in different situations in life, and especially conflict resolution, because there are so many little conflicts that seem to come up in sexual, in the seduction phase of courtship, when sex is like about to happen, that how you handle those situations, because there'll be so much male libido in the scenario, so much wanting and craving, and when you're younger, you have more of that flesh hunger, and later in life, it's less. And to be able to handle your own want and attachment and desire with the fact that there's another human here that also has wants and desires and needs to feel comfortable in this and that, softer, fairer sex, and so isn't going to go about it the same way as you. And how do you commune with your occasion? How do you talk and commune? And this is a vital, vital skill set. So distinguish tension from excitement, I think, is the key.
Awesome. Well, Chris, I think we start ending it here.
Yeah.
I can talk a little bit about where viewers can continue to get more content as we continue building this out.
Yeah.
So we're doing this every Saturday and Sunday at noon Eastern.
Yeah.
Talking for about between half an hour to 40 minutes about the whole concept of enlightened masculinity. What does it mean? Neither of us claim to be enlightened. We're masculine, but I'd say that's all. But we're continuing really to explore this, and my whole idea on this is how do we show other men how to approach women with respect and admiration in a way that benefits both parties, so that your men are able to really tap into and get some of the juiciest sex of their life, but also respect and admire women for everything that they have to offer in this sense. We have the Rising Suns group, which is where we will be posting content throughout the week. I'll post I'll share one lesson or some such thing that I've picked up from the lessons with Vince, Arash, along with some of my other teachers out there. I am also running a sunrise yoga hiking experience in Montclair, New Jersey. This is going to really start ramping up in late February and March. So if you're interested in that, reach out to me, and more than happy to give you some information around that. Mm-hmm. Chris, I know you're a master linguist, so I'd love to hear a little bit more about some of the products that you have and what you're up to right there.
Well, I have an online training group, and I wanted to respond to one of these questions from the guy that had the RST question. He said, where do I find more info about your teacher? I mean, we post about him all the time. His name is Arash Dibazar. You can find him on Instagram, the Arash Dibazar, or AZD Arash Dibazar. His website is Arash Zapar. That's Zepar. And you can find all kinds of stuff on him. He's famous. And buy any and all of his products. I have every into all of his products, and I haven't gone through them all, but I want them.
Same.
I want them in my library because they're just so good. They're so rich. And as far as linguistics, I mean, a lot of what I teach in the silent flute on the language side of things. Oh, there it is. Arash Zapar, Zepar, not Zapar. But Mercer just posted the link. And a lot of what I teach in the silent flute is very linguistics oriented. But of course, like anything I'm doing in life has communication involved. Like I said in the beginning of the talk today, it's either outer communication or it's inner communication. And so there's language involved in that. I was practicing mantras the other morning, and I had this so visceral realization that my inner talk with the mantra practice had a voice tone to it. There was a tone in my inner voice. And tuning into, am I saying this mantra like a peasant? Am I saying this like a beggar? Am I saying this like a little boy? Or am I saying this like a god? I told Yuri, I was like, I changed the voice to Manu's voice which is Arash's teacher. So my mantra became the voice of Manu. I am. I can't do it like him because I'm smiling, but I am. And it was so potent. So linguistics is just like permeates your entire experience of life. And the whole idea, I teach neurolinguistics on a level that's just hitherto untold of, because your whole neurology is involved in your communication. You cannot help but involve your body and your face and your eyes, and your tongue and everything in your breath in your communication. And if it's not involved in your communication, there's blockage, there's tension. Your body naturally wants to communicate what every word you speak. And so posture and breathing, which are just, fundamental hatha yoga practices, which is what I teach, are very included in this. And then, of course, how I teach it, how do I transmit the idea that's going to involve all the qualities of speech, including syntax and language and verbiage and all of this. So this is what I teach. As far as products, I came out with Flavor of Language. It's a big hit. A bunch of people bought it.
I picked it up myself.
Yeah, and those are
incredible.
And those are 18 months or 2 years old. And I'm like on a climb like this. I found Arash 3.5 years ago. So some of the content now in my communications folders, basically my silent flute's broken up into meditation, mindset, posture, breathing, and communication. And in the communication folder, I do a lot on neurolinguistics, especially things like when emotions come up and how you can regress back into the first early stages of when you first felt that experience. What did you say to yourself in that experience? And then how can we reword what you said to yourself? You immediately reshape some of the energy and you reshape some of your belief systems around that. So this is what I teach. Go to ninthlimb.com, sign up for the Silent Flute. You get a free consultation when you initiate into the program, and we'll get you a customized curriculum that's going to get you some desired outcomes. It's a beautiful system that I've developed. And as far as the rest, catch us every day at noon. On weekends, we have Enlightened Masculinity. We got the private Facebook group called Rising Suns, where we'll be giving the private content throughout the week and unavailable elsewhere. Thanks, Mercer, for typing out my link. So that's Rising Suns. Go to Facebook, look for the group Rising Suns. And of course, if you're catching this on a podcast channel or whatever, you can see the links below or the Instagram channels and send us a message if you got a question. You can't make the live broadcast. You can always send us a question and we'll include it in our broadcast. And that's my pitching for today.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, brother. I really appreciate this as always. Every time, there's such a richness in the sense of what I'm able to gather from you and your presence itself. It's absolutely incredible. So thank you so much, and namaste.
Namaste. See you tomorrow, brother.
Yes.